for free and all that stuff. Oh, okay. All right. That's okay. Okay, yeah, and that'll be like next Saturday, because it'll take like a couple of hours, and they actually close at 6 p.m. So it would be like before the start of our meeting time, so it wouldn't really make sense to just go like during the time of our meeting. But yeah, I hope you guys can come out. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay. And so just coming up this quarter, we just have our social week 4 next Saturday. Our next general meeting, we're going to be having a representative from a local community service opportunity come in and talk about how you guys can get involved with that. And then we're going to be having just like a general overview of like local opportunities that you guys can get involved in if you're looking for your community service hours, which I will be getting into later on in this meeting. And then later on, right after that meeting, we're just going to be going over to Chaw to get some boba. I think it's from like 7 to 9 or something, but feel free to come out. Okay, and then week 7, we're going to get UCI med students to come over and like show us how to do a bunch of clinical skills that medical students learn, like suturing, blood pressure, taking blood pressure with like a manual cuff, clinical knots. There's like 4 different types of clinical knots that they go over, so it's really cool. And then week 10, we're just going to be having like a very low-key social before finals. Snacks are involved just to de-stress. So yeah. Oh yeah, and then you get a membership point for attending also. And if you guys have any questions about membership, feel free to ask me or Catherine. So sounds good. Okay, so today we're just going to talk about like, an overview of what's really important for medical school applications. A lot of this is the same for health school applications. There are some like specifics, but since most of our like members are interested in being pre-med, that's kind of what I'm going to focus on today. Come on in. Okay, so as we went over last quarter, these are kind of like the requirements that you need in terms of your classes. The stuff on the left is what's required. The stuff on the right is what is really recommended. The good thing about UCI is that if you're a bio major, you get rid of most of these like prerequisites, just like in your course plan, so you don't have to take any additional classes. And then for like similar majors like public health and pharm sci, like a lot of the prereqs are similar, so but you may just have to take some additional courses. And then I'll mention this later also, but like the reason that humanities courses are really important is because they show up on the MCAT. There's 2 humanities sections. So, and also it shows medical schools that like you don't just care about the science, but like medicine is very interdisciplinary. So it doesn't just involve kind of like biology and chemistry, but it also involves like an understanding of how the human body operates overall, how we like operate as human beings. In a society, and so it's good to show them to medical schools that like you have sort of an understanding of like what you're getting into. Okay, and then this is like a really detailed chart that I have. So the reason that I started off with like coursework is because for med school, your MCAT and your GPA are like basically the barrier and like for your application. It's not really framed that way. It's kind of a soft barrier. But as you can see on this chart, it's kind of small, but towards the top right there, if like your MCAT is greater than 517 and your GPA is higher than 3.79, you have like almost a 90% chance of getting into medical school. And the lower your MCAT is, the lower your GPA is, the lower your chances are of getting into medical school. And that's because medical schools and like other grad schools, health schools in general, are like super, super rigorous. And so admissions committees just want to see that like you can handle what's in college, you've developed like good study techniques, and that you're prepared to take on the stress of being in med school, because it's like a lot. Yeah, so I don't know. Oh, and also if you guys have any questions, like feel free to stop me at any time. I don't want to like make this seem like a lecture or anything. I'm just like providing a lot of like foundational info, but if you guys have any questions about anything or want like clarification, just feel free to stop me whenever. Okay. Cool. And then so for the MCAT, when I was making this slide, I found that in my own resources, this was literally from like 2 years ago, I had this document that has like the most comprehensive approach to preparing for the MCAT like I've ever seen. And I got it from a YouTube video of these 2 girls who scored over a 520 on the MCAT. And so I saved this, and I mean, like, it has everything that you could like ever need. I haven't even taken the MCAT myself. There's a lot of like really good study advice out there, but I think that this is straight from the source of people who've taken it and done really well. So I really recommend like looking through it. They go through and review like several different study programs. they go through how you can study without paying for like a really expensive program. They have like templates of their own study timeline. I think one of them took like 9 months to study and the other took like 3 months. So there's a good variety in there too. So I really recommend it for sure. And also we'll have these slides on the website, so you can also just like access it by clicking on the link there. But then just some quick like sort of tips about the MCAT. So like I mentioned before, there are 2 science sections and 2 like humanities sections. One is based on like bio and like biochemical like science. The other is based on like more physical science. And then one is based on, again, like psychology and sociology. And then the last one is called CARS, which is like critical application reasoning skills or something.
Critical analysis, reasoning skills.
Got it, yeah. So you just like read through a paragraph and then you have to like sort of analyze it.
It's a whole page.
A whole page? Oh my God, that's a really long paragraph. So yeah, so that's why like taking writing classes and humanities classes is really important as well. So, and then, yeah, and so medical schools can see like all the different times that you take the MCAT and they can see your score. And so definitely they want to see like an upward curve, like if your first time you didn't do so well, but your second time you did a lot better, that sends a really good signal to them. And then also typically your MCAT score like doesn't stay applicable for longer than 3 years, I think. So if you're not taking a gap year, you can just take it the same year that you're applying. So you can take it in up to like April, and then applications open in May. So ideally you would already have your score before you apply. However, if you're taking a gap year, like this can change a little bit. You can take your MCAT and then like start applying the next year, and your MCAT score will still be applicable. But that is something that you like definitely have to plan ahead for. And it takes like a while to study for the MCAT too. Some people like cram and do it over the summer and they like only focus on the MCAT. Some people like to stretch it out over several months, but it's definitely a beast. I mean, I don't know if like any of our board members have started studying yet. Probably. Oh, really? Okay. All right. But yeah, well, good luck. So that's kind of that. So that's like the very like technical stuff that you guys can like study for. And oh, okay, perfect. And, no worries. Okay. And then this is like what's called the work and activity section of the medical school like application site, the AAMC. So this chart over here just goes through like all of the possible activities that you could put on your application, and up there is what's most like highly ranked, and then like what's pretty well ranked but not like as important as the other stuff. And then this is like stuff that you can include on your application but not really relevant at all. Like for example, what your major is. They don't really care about what your major is. So as you can see at the top there, what's most important is like GPA and MCAT. They really care about not necessarily having like good grades throughout all 4 years, but they really want to see like that upward curve as well, because it just shows that like you improve, you're really paying attention to how you're studying, how you're doing in your classes, and that's really important. And then also what's really important in terms of experiences, extracurricular experiences, is clinical experience, either paid or volunteer. And then also shadowing, leadership. That's pretty much it. So that's kind of the stuff that you guys should start thinking about if you want to apply for med school. That's the stuff that will really make you stand out on an application. And so the only thing is like, you can be involved in a lot of stuff throughout your 4 years of college and also after college if you do decide to take a gap year, but there's only 15 entries that you can put on your application. However, for your, there's only like, I think 3 or 4 parts of the application, parts of the activity section where that like are really the most meaningful to you. So these are like the ones that you would do over several years, the ones that you've really sort of left an impact in, like whether you had a leadership position or you started a new program. And like ones that where you really got to grow personally. That's really like the most important thing. It's not just kind of like volunteering here for 3 months and then like working at a research lab for 2 quarters, but like sticking with something, growing in that field and like developing new skills, and then being able to show like how that left an impact on you and how you were able to leave an impact on that particular activity. And then, as I mentioned before, at our week 5 meeting, we will be talking about some local community service opportunities that you guys can get involved in. So any questions so far about like all this info? It's kind of, it's like kind of overwhelming at first, I think, but I think the trick is just like sort of shopping around and trying a lot of different stuff until you really find like what you're passionate about. So cool. And so I'll just get started talking about like clinical experience, because that's like directly related to the healthcare field. And I think from what I've heard, like physicians say and medical students, this is like the most important thing that shows medical school admissions committees that you really know what the healthcare field looks like, that you have had patient interaction, that you really know what you're getting yourself into. That's really what they want to see. And so these are just like some local, or not some local, but just some possible like opportunities that you guys can get involved in. For like things like either an EMT or a certified like medical assistant, for example, you do need to get trained. Actually, Alicia, I think, is a medical assistant, right? And Angelina too, or just Alicia, or both of you? Okay, and you guys like go through the training program? Or
I think some places don't require a certificate.
Okay.
So ours did. So
Okay.
we just get it.
okay,
But we are hiring if anyone wants to join.
yeah, they're hiring. So yeah, and also you can get paid. So that's like really kind of the 2-for-1. That I think it's great. A lot of our board members also have entered at Irvine Urgent Care. They take a lot of UCI med students. And from what I've heard, like people say, you guys can also talk about it later if you want, but from what I've heard is that like the physicians there really give a lot of mentorship to their interns. So I think that's a good opportunity. Clinical scribes is also like a really, really good one. I think the thing about scribing that makes it so popular is that like you get probably the most patient interaction out of most clinical experiences, because you're like, for those of you guys who may not know what a scribe is basically the person directly in the room with the physician who's taking notes and paying attention to like what the doctor is saying to the patient, how the patient is responding. And so since you're like directly in the room with the physician, that's like the most up close patient interaction that you can possibly get as an undergrad. So that one's definitely popular. There's different programs that you can apply to that sort of like will match you with the hospital. I think one is called like Scribes America. I am not really sure about like what the application entails, but if you guys are interested, I can definitely look into that as well. But that one's a pretty popular one. And then also I want to mention like caretaking. So if everybody's situation is different. If you have like, for example, somebody at home who is ill or who like kind of needs constant physical attention, that also counts as clinical experience because you are directly taking care of a person. It's like in a much different setting from a hospital, but you do sort of get to understand what a patient needs, how to respond to a patient, how to talk to somebody who's ill. And so that also counts as clinical experience. And I got this directly from the AAMC website. So this is all like vetted, but there's like a lot of different kinds of clinical experience. You could also work as a phlebotomist or an ophthalmology technician. Those are like paid jobs. I think you do need to get certified for both of them, but once you get certified, you can just like, work as one. And you get paid and you also get really great patient interaction as well. So that's my slide about that. Okay, and then another one that's really popular is research. So research itself, I don't know if you guys saw the chart that I had before. Research is like not necessarily the most like, okay, if you just like intern at a research lab and you just kind of do like menial stuff, like you like wash glassware, you just like input data, that's not necessarily rated really highly. But if you do, for example, stay in a research lab for like a long time, like over 2 years, or if you get to participate in a project or you have your own project, or you apply, like here we have Europe, we have excellence in research. If you like apply for that, and again, if you show growth, if you show that like you left an impact on the research fields, then that stands out really well in application. So sometimes people wonder if like you have to get your name published in a journal, or like, yeah, so if you have to be an author in a journal in an article that gets published. And that's kind of like a really big deal. And that I think that it sort of depends on luck. So it's not like necessary. I think what's important is just showing that you had your own project and so that you took initiative. And so thankfully UCI has like a lot of really, really amazing labs that you can get involved in. I'm involved in a research lab. Alicia and Rommel and I are actually all in the same lab. I think some of our other board members, I think, are also involved in research. Catherine, you're not, right? But maybe
I was.
you
not
were,
this
yeah.
year.
but maybe, you guys can ask around. And then the other thing is you don't have to be involved in bio research. If you're interested in like psychology or public health, that totally like applies. It doesn't necessarily have to be biological research. So these are just like some steps that I have listed out for how to get involved. You basically just go onto the Bio 199 website and you can get credits for working in a research lab. And there's like a lot of faculty to choose from. The only thing that is difficult about getting into research at UCI is that most likely you will have to email like 15 to 30 professors before one of them either responds or says that they have a spot available. So it definitely, like, these professors just get really busy and like, or they're full, or they just don't see your email. So it definitely takes a while to get started. So I would say get started early. If you're a first year, I think you don't have to get started at your first year. Definitely, you can just use your first year to like get acquainted with college, develop your study skills. But maybe your second or third year, I think, is definitely like the best time to start research. So then, yeah, if you guys have like any questions about that, for sure, like feel free to reach out. I've been working at my research lab for a year and I've really liked it. I feel like I've learned a lot. And I think this like year I'll probably start, working on my own project. So I don't know. I mean, I like it a lot. So oh yeah, and then don't be afraid to like shop around different labs. If if you like don't like a lab that you start out with, it's totally fine to just like switch. Okay, and so given everything that we've talked about, this is like a timeline that we had a timeline. Oops, I just have an empty bullet point there. We had a timeline at our other meeting, but this one I think just takes more into account what we talked about here. So kind of, oh my gosh, I literally forgot to label them as like first year, second year, third year, but it's in chronological order. But so your first year, I would say, you don't have to like worry about necessarily like finding the right clinical experience or finding the right job or like the right research lab. You can definitely use that time to just like get used to college classes, get to know upperclassmen who will provide like a lot of really good advice about which classes to take, which professors to take. You can just kind of think about like, what your goals are after college, and think about like what particular direction you want to go in. But it's totally okay to like not know your freshman year. I didn't know freshman year. Like I was like, I don't know. I just knew that I like biology and medicine, but I like didn't know really that I wanted to be a physician or anything. And then, I mean, you guys have already done this, but you can join a club or healthcare organizations, like sort of look around, shop around, look at what's out there. I would say like definitely get to know people who are interested in the same goals as you. I mean, like mentorship is really important. That's kind of what we try to make like as a goal of our organization or our club, I mean. And so I would say just like get acquainted with like what college is all about and start thinking about like what you want to do. And then your sophomore year, I think that is a good time to start at least some sort of clinical experience, some sort of community service experience. Clinical volunteering actually is another, for example, like at Irvine Urgent Care, you don't get paid, but you do get a lot of patient interaction, like working as an intern there. And so I would say that that's a good time to get started. You don't necessarily have to have any like sort of big thing going on your second year. That's a good time to just kind of start getting your feet wet and find an activity that you really like. And then I would say, and then also like second year, you have to take like OChem and like the bio classes get harder. So like classes will definitely be difficult and it'll be a struggle to, I would say, to like keep up that GPA. And like I said before, GPA and MCAT scores are really important. So none of these like activities should be in opposition with like, having enough time to study. And then I would say in your second year, that would be a good time to decide if you want to take a gap year, because, that depends on like this particular timeline is only based on like, if you don't take a gap year, this is like the traditional pre-med timeline. If you just get all of your activities done in your 4 years and you start medical school right after college. But that's like actually becoming very uncommon now. I would say I saw a statistic once that said that like 90% of med school applicants in like the past application cycle took at least one gap year. So it's really common to take a gap year. And so it's up to you. but it's good to decide that because that decides when you want to take your MCAT, when you want to start kind of putting more time into like your extracurricular opportunities. So it's good to have that in mind. And then your junior year, again, if you're not taking a gap year, you do want to take your MCAT because you want to take your MCAT before the year the same year that you apply. And the thing about applying to med school is it takes an entire year. So you apply the year of like, for example, let's say you want to apply for like this next cycle that starts in the next school year that starts in 2023. You would have applied in May of 2022 because it takes a full year for them to process and like accept you. And then you start next September, if that makes sense. So it takes like a really long time it takes time. And so you have to plan ahead for that. It's definitely a long process. And then some other stuff to do when I'm just looking through. Yeah. And so your third year, you've already had some ideally some clinical experience or some research experience. And you want to start thinking about your personal statement because this is like kind of your essay. It's like why I'm going to make a good doctor, and to medical school is like why you should accept me. And that has to do a lot with like what you've learned from your experiences outside of college. So you should really kind of start thinking about like what you're learning, why you want to go into medicine, what about medicine really appeals to you, and why you think you'll make a good physician. And the other thing is definitely you want to like develop strong relationships with your professors because letters of rec are important for applications, and I'll get into that later. But the best way to like get a letter of rec from your professor is just to go to like office hours, develop a relationship with them, like ask them questions. It seems intimidating, but like most of them are really nice and really want to help students. So it's not, scary. And then throughout your third year or the year before you apply, ideally you want to like just work on your application. And that just means like putting everything into the website, working on your personal statement, answering like all of their prompts. That takes a while. And then you send your apps in May of your third year. And then your senior year, you want to finish with a really strong GPA because that upward curve is really important in terms of like your GPA increasing over time. And then you want to keep like building your clinical hours for sure. By this point, you should probably have something that really makes you stand out on your application. Like either you started or you had a leadership position and you really were able to implement a really successful program, or you maybe have like your own research project under your belt, something like that. And then again, if you do research, I don't know if this is required for the bio major, but a lot of bio seniors work on a senior thesis project. So they just have like their own thesis experiment that they run, and then they write a paper about it and publish it. And so that's something good to put on your application. So yeah, so this is just kind of over 4 years. If you do take a gap year, you can totally spread this out. You can like adjust it however you want, however is best for you. Like for me personally, I know that I have to take a gap year because I want to take a gap year because if I had like a full course load plus working like 15 hours a week at the research lab, plus having like a clinical job and like volunteering, like I would get super overwhelmed, and then I would feel like I wouldn't be able to do my best in each activity that I'm involved in. So I want to spread it out a little bit so that I can focus like on everything, better and not get like super overwhelmed. So that's just my opinion. But yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on the person. Does that kind of like make sense for everybody so far, like the timeline? Okay. And then this is like a lot of other stuff, not really like the basic kind of stuff that you need for application, but also really important. So like I mentioned, letters of rec are required from your professors. Well, it's recommended to have like 5 to 6 letters of recommendation. 3 from your professors. You should have 2 science, so like biochemistry or physics, and then 1 from the humanities. And then if you shadowed a physician or you worked under a physician at a hospital or a clinic, they should write you a letter of recommendation as well to attest to your like clinical abilities. And then for any other extra credit or extracurricular opportunities that you have, like either your PI at your research lab, or I don't know, if you work like at a soccer coach, like the person who manages you could also write a letter of recommendation talking about your character. So, and the thing is, you don't want a lukewarm letter of recommendation. You really want a strong letter of rec that like emphasizes everything that's great about you and why you should really get accepted to medical school. And so in order to do that, you kind of have to put in some effort to stand out. Like you have to go to office hours with your professor. basically you want to make sure that like people get to know you. The people who are going to be writing your letter of rec, they really have to get to know you. So, and then like I mentioned before, you can decide if you want to take a gap year. It's really common. The benefits of taking a gap year are that you can focus on your grades and developing relationships with your professors while you're in college. And the other thing is that, so I went to a presentation given by the Dean of Admissions at UCI Medical School. This was like my freshman year, it was like pre-pandemic, but she was giving a talk to pre-meds about like what's required for med school and how UCI Medical School screens its applicants. And so what she said was that if you want to be a competitive applicant, you need like 2,000 hours of clinical research or clinical experience. So for example, 2,000 hours working in a doctor's office. The thing is, if you take a gap year and you just fully dedicate that time to clinical experience and you have a full-time job working as like, I don't know, a scribe, for example, that's 40 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year. So 40 times 50 is 2,000. So you can like get your 2,000 hours that way, and you don't necessarily have to worry about it during your during the time that you're in college. And then the other thing is that also you have more time dedicated to studying for the MCAT, or you can apply for a post-baccalaureate program if you need to get your grades up. Post-bac programs are basically after you graduate from a college, you can take additional courses at a college's like post-bac program, and then the grades that you get in those classes combine with your GPA from that you got at your four-year college, and then they increase your overall GPA. So that's like an option for people who kind of had like not a really good GPA while they were in college and really wanted to improve it. And then the other thing is that important to think about, and this is something that's important, I think, to keep in mind, like while you're a pre-med before you apply, because for your personal statement is like the first thing that admissions committees read, and it basically is like an essay about who you are. Specifically, it's about like insight about your character, what you've learned through all of your experiences as a pre-med, and like how each experience is evidence that you're going to make a good physician. That's really what they're looking for. And you kind of like want to combine everything, and you want to craft a story. That's really like what's going to make you stand out. You want to have like a story that kind of shows who you are, what you've learned, and what is unique about you. And then another thing is that, giving back. So community service is like really, really important. Because like medicine is ultimately kind of a self, I don't know, I don't want to say like sacrificing profession, but you know, your energy is dedicated to healing other people at like a really vulnerable time in their life. And so medical schools want to see that you do give back to your community, that you're involved in community service, that you're somehow altruistic and selfless. And so examples of community service I'm just going to give here are like you could volunteer at a free clinic. And then also if you're like a caregiver to somebody in your family, like if you have like a younger sibling or something, you take care of them, or an ill person in your family, that also counts sort of as like dedicating your time towards somebody or something, and then not getting like really like paid for it in return, but that just show like kind of selflessness. And also there's opportunities for leadership. You know, you could like grow and grow up the ranks in like, for example, a free clinic that you volunteer in. And so that's like sort of something that to keep in mind as well. Like it's kind of, it works both ways basically. And then another thing that also is important to think about throughout all like 4 years of being a pre-med is that every medical school has a slightly different mission statement. And a mission statement just describes like what their goals are as a medical school. Some schools are like really focused on community service and giving back to the community. Some are focused on like they have wording like they want to develop like really strong physicians, or like really, I don't know, physicians with like a really strong clinical acumen. So basically they want like people who really understand the healthcare industry well. And then some medical schools have mission statements that are really heavily focused on research and intellectual pursuits. And so I think it's important to think about that because the schools that you apply to, it's best to have them be the ones that match your own values. Their mission statements have to match your own values. So like if you really care about, for example, research, if you really love research and you really love like being challenged intellectually, you should definitely apply more to schools that have that in their mission statement and really value that from their applicants as well. And so I think that's really helpful because it kind of provides a direction of like where you're going. You can start thinking about which schools you want to apply to. And I don't know, I think it's helpful because it gives you like a direction. You're not just kind of like a pre-med like slogging through OChem, but you sort of like have, I think, like a light at the end of the tunnel, a goal. And so let me see. Oh yeah, and so also like something that I didn't mention before was that after you submit your primary application, medical schools will send you secondary applications, which is just like prompts that you have to answer. There are some prompts that basically ask more about your character and more about your experiences. And so you can definitely highlight specific experiences that you've had that match the school's mission statement for each school's secondary. So that was kind of a lot, but that's pretty much all that I have. And so I'm curious if there was anything that you guys wanted me to talk about that I didn't really cover today. I try to be comprehensive, but there's definitely a lot. So I think this was like kind of a really foundational look at being a pre-med, but was there anything that you guys are interested in also? Yes.
It says 2,000 hours of clinical experience.
Yeah.
And if you don't plan on taking it back year or now, what is the number for just like the typical 4-year pre-med?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, so the thing is you could split it, you could have, for example, a part-time clinical job, which is like 15 to 20 hours. So let's say you do 20 hours a week for an entire school year. So that's 52 weeks. That's 20 times 52, which is about 1,000. But you could, if you do that for 2 years or 3 years, you could increase that. You could do 2,000 hours, you know what I mean? Like if you do a little bit each week, it definitely adds up. You just have to do it for longer. So I would say that like definitely 2,000 hours is a good goal to have. It's what makes you competitive. It shows that like you really, really know what you're doing and that you've learned a lot. So that's a good question. I would say like target that as much as you can. Yeah. So, I mean, 2,000 hours is a lot, but if you can get like kind of in that ballpark, I would say that's really the most helpful. Yeah.
Are these paid or unpaid? Or does it matter?
For your application or just like
Or for clinical experience?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just what matters is like the quality of patient interaction.
Okay, they just want you to, they want to see that you had exposure to the medical field. And that
Yes.
you're not seeing that, no, that's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That like you really talked to patients and dealt with patients. You could even work as like a receptionist at a doctor's office. Again, the same like dean of the UCI medical school that I talked to, she said that counts because like you get to deal with patients who are angry or are like late to their appointment and like you're still interacting with them. So it counts as clinical experience. Yeah. Yes.
Have you ever seen any clinical experiences like after normal school hours? Like, because I'm more of a morning person in class.
Yeah.
So have you seen something that's like a 3 to 9 or
3 to
is
9.
it usually like daytime?
No, it's definitely not.
It's more of like a 4-hour window.
Yeah. So it definitely, it depends. Like a part-time job would probably be in like 4-hour shifts, I would say. But like last year, we had a board member who worked as an EMT. She did night shifts, so she would start work at like 8 p.m. or something, and then she would work through the whole night. So that's like not really feasible. But definitely, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Actually has like 4 to 7 shifts. So
Oh.
there are lots of teachers or jobs that do have flexible schedules to work with students. So that's definitely an issue. A lot of places nearby, especially, understand that we have students that have full schedules.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. There's definitely opportunities there. Probably just have to search for them. Like, yeah, for sure. Anything else? Rommel, I think I saw your hand was up, but I don't know if you.
Just like,
Okay, sounds good. Okay,
Going based off of that, do you then recommend to like kind of stack our classes together so we'll have those open spaces in time?
oh, that's a good question. That's strategic thinking. I mean, if you can, I think that would be like the most practical because, for example, if you have all your classes like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can work full day Tuesday, Thursday. But
There's weekends too.
yeah, there's weekends too. Like Irvine Urgent Care is open Saturdays, I think. Maybe not Sunday. Yeah, Saturdays. Okay, cool. I mean, I know it's not always possible, like to have your classes kind of be like only in the mornings or afternoons, but I think just from like a practicality standpoint, that would definitely be really helpful.
I think it's tricky when you have labs too. So
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, with labs are tricky, because labs take up like 4 hours of one day, but only one day of the week, so you can't even have like, you know,
Sometimes
Yeah.
when people are, all their classes on like Tuesday.
Yeah.
Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, so they can work like the other days.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely popular.
it's basically like your part-time job. So you have to look at it. If you've ever worked part-time, you have to look at it as like swapping it. So it is your part-time job. So look at it as, how can you work around your work schedule and vice versa.
Yeah, for sure. So, but sometimes it depends, like if one professor for a class is like really crappy, like you don't have to suffer through them. Like, I mean, it depends basically on like what your schedule is like. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. It's definitely a lot to think about, but like there's no rush. Like you have a few years out. Is everybody in here like a first year? Or like mostly, because that was what we had like at our first meeting. Okay, yeah. So you guys have a lot of time. The other thing that a lot of people say is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So don't feel like you have to like find your perfect clinical experience like right now in your first year. So
I think another thing important to mention is to go on your own timeline.
Yeah.
Because you're not working on anyone else's timeline. You're working on your own. So if you want to focus on your classes and just enjoy the college experience, you could totally run that route too. I mean, if you don't mind taking a couple of gap years, that's something you can do. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. You just got to pay attention to things like, I think the biggest one is the MCAT. Like she said last meeting, it's only good for 3 years. So just make sure you take that pretty much around the same time that you're applying to med school. But other than that, you're pretty much free bird, just kind of go with whatever you want with, because you want to enjoy the experience too. You don't want to slave away at it, or else you're going to just burn out.
Yeah.
So it's important to mention that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've read that like the average age for a first year medical student is 24. So like on average, they take 3 gap years. So it's like super common. I've met yeah, go ahead. No. I was just gonna say I've met med students who were like 30 when they applied. So it's totally not a big deal.
On one of the slides, we did
Yes, the MCAT. So that's just because that's kind of more, it sends a signal to admissions committees at med schools that you weren't very intentional about how you approach the MCAT. Because if you take it, I think it's offered like every month. If you take it, if you get a not so great score your first time, you definitely need time to analyze where you went wrong, how you can improve, and then implement that into a new study schedule. So that just takes just a lot of time. And I think if you take the MCAT like sort of a lot, like really frequently, I think it just shows med school admissions committees that like you didn't really put in the right effort and the right mindful effort into really improving like your approach to it. So it's more of just like a signal about, I guess, like your approach to studying, basically. Yeah.
I think you can only take it a max of 7 times before they won't let you take it again.
Yeah. So.
I mean, but if you're on like the 7th try, it's like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. Like, yeah. So that's kind of it. I think the other thing about the MCAT versus GPA is that med schools generally want to see them like be in the same range, because sometimes like college courses, for example, some classes are an easy A, or there's like extra credit, or you can get an A in a class for whatever reason. Admissions committees don't always know that like it was because of how much you studied and how well you studied, but that doesn't exist with the MCAT. So they want to see kind of like, if they see a match, it means that like you really are intentional about how you study and that you're prepared for medical school. So yeah.
And you have the option that when you take the MCAT, you have the option to either have your MCAT graded or just like forgotten about. So if you take the MCAT and you realize you were severely under prepared, you still have the experience of taking the MCAT and what it's like, but you can choose to not have it graded, so that way it doesn't go on your record as a like you took it. You're out $500, but at least it's not like, oh, I already took it once. It shows up on my record. You have that full option to do that too.
I didn't even know that you could just like wipe it out.
Yeah. You go, you take it, and then when you submit it at the end, you can say either yes, I want my MCAT graded, or no, I want it omitted.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's like a trial run.
Yeah, you could do it. I recommend saving $500 and just
Yeah.
do like a practice exam through
Yeah.
some other source, because that you can typically find ones that are free. And also remember that MCAT is a killer that is 8 hours long. With there's 4 sections. There's a 10-minute break between each section, except for after section 2, there's a 30-minute break for lunch. I can go all into about the MCAT if you wish, but up to you guys.
Have you taken a real test like already or just?
No, I've just learned a lot about it. I've never actually gone in and taken it yet because I know the kind of monster it is.
Yeah,
So
no, good
it's
to be
like, no, not
prepared.
yet.
It's expensive, so, and time and money, so it's good to, you know. Yeah, I know.
I should have late, but you mentioned a permanent record for the MCATs. Does that mean like if you took it 7 times, a medical school would see that you took it like 7 times? You can't
Yes.
kind of like pick and choose which one.
Yeah, the
No.
AMC will just be like, you're done.
Yeah. They also, they do keep on record all of the scores that you have and all the times that you've taken it, so they will see. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it happens that like somebody will take an MCAT like in college and then take like 3 gap years and then take it again. So like if they see that you've taken it multiple times, but there was like a really like large gap in between, that's really easily explainable. So that's a different thing. But if you take a gap in the MCAT like every month or every 2 months, that's kind of a red flag.
For the 2,000 hours, would you recommend that we log those? And if so, how?
Oh, good question. So from what I've heard, there's not really, oh, well, okay, so here's the thing. So it's like an admissions committee person can like call, for example, a hospital that you worked at and be like, did this person really work here for this long? And that's how they check. I don't,
Some places give you like a time commitment certificate.
yeah.
But really, it's more of like a the hours thing. It's more of like kind of like a checkbox kind of thing when you go to apply for med school, saying, do you have clinical experience? Obviously, you don't want to leave that blank, because that's the first thing they see is like, oh, they didn't do any of that. Okay, sure, we'll keep you in if you have other good things, but you may not be as competitive as someone who also has the same grades as you and MCAT score, but they also have clinical experience. Then they're obviously going to get given the your spot in med school. But yeah, it's basically like talk about it, and if they are interested in you, they'll probably reach out to who you work for, basically.
I want to say that I think that kind of proof of your hours isn't as important as like taking something away from your experience. They want to hear like what you learned and like what you take away from it. Oh, here's my certificate. I did it.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I
true.
mean?
Like,
Yeah.
can I go to school now?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, it's not just like a task that you can check off. It's really important to show like what you learned from it, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Rummel. Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so the way I apply, like I just emailed, like I can speak and set up their email. But I just emailed them and I was thinking like, I'm interested in interviewing here. I heard you had a position open, like are you available for a meeting anytime soon where we can discuss this? And then she emailed me back and she was like, oh yeah, sure, like let's have a phone interview. And then I just like talked on the phone for like 10 minutes. And she was like, yeah, like this sounds good. Like, let's get you in. And then I just got a pair of scrubs. And then I was, sorry, I'm blinking. What was it? Trained. I was trained. Yes. I was trained my first shift. And then after that, they were just like, okay, go for it. But basically, the shift is 4 hours. They have like a lot of options throughout the week. They have certain shift times like scheduled out, but they're pretty like flexible with your schedule. Like if you can't make one of those and want to like adjust it a little bit, they'll more than likely accommodate that. But it's a honestly, you get a lot of patient care, a lot of experience. You get to room patients, which basically means you take their vitals, you like their temperature, their blood pressure, and then you ask them like, why'd you come here? Like, how are you feeling? Like, oh, you're hurt. Where? When did this happen? How long ago? How does it feel? Like that sort of thing. And then You get to run your analyses, you get to make IVs. Like, there's like a lot of things that actually go into it, and you get to see what goes behind like how a clinic is run. Because it's Irvine Urgent Care Clinic. There's the urgent care side, there's also a pain management side. So you get to actually see both of those. And you can like form connections with doctors there. I know interns have like sat in on procedures on pain management side. One time, like I heard, like, I was just like rooming a patient, and he was like, "Oh, want to know what's wrong with me?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then he was like, "Yeah, like I just had this surgery where the doctor, like my bones are like grinding up next to each other, and the doctor injected,
Like cartilage or something?
it wasn't that. It was like some sort of like lube to make it like not grind against each other. You know what I mean? So he was like, "Yeah, like, that happened." I was like, super cool. Like they'll just like talk to you, and then the X-ray tech there, like he'll be like looking at like MRI images, and I'll just like be behind him and be like, "Hey, what's that? Hey, what's that?" And he'll like answer like all your questions. Like they're so like amazing and kind. Like, they're ready to give you all their knowledge. Like, it's fantastic. So definitely.
That sounds really fun. Actually.
Yeah, that does.
Is there like a time commitment, like whether it is like 100 hours or something?
I don't know if there's a time limit in that sense. They do require one shift a week and one shift is 4 hours, but I don't think that they require you to like stay for.
Yep. When you say pain management, do you mean pharmaceuticals or do you mean something else?
I mean, like it's a clinic where patients who have like chronic pain issues, they come and they're like, how do I deal with this? And then the doctor will prescribe them meds or give them a procedure that is supposed to help deal with that. If that
So what you're saying is you're not interning for a pharmacist and you're watching as they like write up the prescriptions and like write it up. Okay.
Yeah, how far away is it? Because transportation is like I don't know. So
yeah, it's you guys know what Diamond Jamboree is? It's like right next to there. It's like it's just Diamond Jamboree is like right here, then you go down Paulson's. So 11-minute drive, if I remember.
it's a bus maybe.
I suppose if you find a friend too that's also doing the same shift, you can probably just hitch a ride with them. It's like, I'll give you some gas money or something, just take me.
I don't know if it's a bus stop, but then in the Anteater Express, like they're having their off-campus routes now, right? And one goes to Diamond Jamboree, so Friday. Or is it
I think it's
Fridays?
once a week.
Oh, awkward.
Just get your shift on Friday then.
I mean, it's like a 10-minute drive, so it's not like super far, but you do probably need like a vehicle, so it's maybe a scooter. I think a scooter could probably work. Yeah.
It's not a clinical experience, carpool.
Yeah. Totally. Oh yeah, actually, Emily was telling us that somebody asked her about having like ride sharing to community service events. So I think next meeting we'll have a response for that, so you guys can fill that out. Yeah.
You can have a slide after.
Oh, it's just like all of our socials. So you guys wanna, yeah, but I don't want to keep you guys too long. Thank you for coming. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out at any time. And these slides will be on our website, so you can.
Should we pull the Tanaka ones?
Oh yeah, for sure. If anybody wants to fill out the interest form for pumpkin patch outing.
So we're going earlier this year, so it's like,
Yeah.
thank God. So it'll be really fun.
Yeah.
I think last year they even, if you're into that, I know it's a guy's kind of thing, but they'll let you, if you like give them some, I don't remember how much it costs, like maybe like $10 or so. You can actually launch a pumpkin out of a cannon across into the mountain range. So if you're into breaking shit, excuse my French, that's for you.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Would we feel with race today? Because I usually go home for the weekend.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure, no.
Yeah, you all pay your like own admission. fee.
Yeah, yeah,
So
no.
yeah, you bring what you want.
Join it, but put that on, if you and they need a ride, just put that on the form. Okay, sounds good, awesome. Yeah,
Are you sharing these slides?
yeah, they'll be on our website, I'll just go to the next. Our AMSA website is just, if you just look up AMSA UCI, it should show up, but it's a Wix site, so. And then there's a tab that's called resources, and they should be there.
And they'll also go out in the next announcement email.
True, yes.
This can just because you're driving, this costs money for parking, but we're like parking costs like.
Yes.
Did you figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that it'll be okay.
Okay.
I can always like just drive by there and check it out.
Alright.
Was there another hand thing, or no? Just my eyes. Okay, all right, well, thank you guys so much for coming out. I hope you have a good rest of your week.
I guess if they want to, someone wants to stay after this. that's fair.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We'll be here.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just watch you by the way.
Thank you.